At 68, Franklin Morris, the former U.S. Attorney General, believed that staying active was key to aging gracefully. Every day of the week, he jogged the quiet streets of Crescentville, a small suburban town known for its friendly neighbors and serene environment. One particular Thursday morning, something unexpected awaited him. Franklin jogged past the old bakery. Near a narrow alley, he heard a muffled cry. Curiosity turned to concern as he stopped. Turning his head, he saw an elderly white woman struggling with two young men. One of them grabbed her purse while the other tried to wrestle a bracelet from her wrist. "Hey, leave her alone," Franklin shouted with a firm voice. The two men turned toward him, startled. For a moment, they hesitated, as if sizing up the older man. But when Franklin stepped forward with clenched fists, they immediately bolted. "Cowards," Franklin muttered under his breath, watching them disappear into the shadows. He debated chasing them but quickly dismissed the idea. His running days were behind him, and he knew better than to risk injury. Instead, he turned his attention to the woman. She was trembling, clutching her now empty purse strap. "Thank you," she said between sobs. They took everything." Franklin placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and said to her, "It's all right, ma'am. I hope you're not hurt." Before she could answer, a police cruiser sped toward them. Franklin waved, relieved that help had arrived. The car screeched to a halt, and Officer Jack Burnett stepped out, hand resting on his holster. His sharp gaze scanned the scene, quickly landing on Franklin, who stood beside the distressed woman. "Step away from her," Jack barked. Franklin froze, confused by the officer's tone. "Officer, I was helping her." "I said step away," Jack interrupted, drawing closer. The elderly woman tried to intervene. "No, officer, you don't understand. He's not the one." "Ma'am, I'll handle this," Jack said, cutting her off. Franklin raised his hands, trying to de-escalate the situation. "Listen, there's been a misunderstanding." Jack wasn't interested in explanations. "Hands where I can see them." As Franklin obeyed, he realized this wasn't about the robbery anymore. Franklin's hands were still raised as Officer Burnett moved closer, his stance tense. The situation had spiraled out of control in a matter of seconds. The elderly woman, visibly upset, pleaded again. "Officer, please, he's innocent. Those boys ran away before you arrived." Jack ignored her, his focus entirely on Franklin. "What were you doing here, old man? Trying to make a quick getaway?" Franklin frowned, his patience wearing thin. "Officer, I already told you. I was helping her. I chased off the real criminals." But Jack's mind was set. He had already judged Franklin, and no amount of reasoning seemed to matter. "You think I'm stupid?" Jack spat, his voice laced with hostility. "Save your story for the judge." Franklin took a deep breath, keeping his tone measured. "You're making a mistake." Jack's hand inched toward his holster. "The only mistake is you thinking you can fool me." The small crowd that had gathered began murmuring among themselves. Some pulled out their phones, recording the escalating scene. A young man in the crowd shouted, "Officer, let him talk," but Jack didn't seem to hear. Franklin noticed the crowd but didn't let it distract him. He needed to focus on staying calm. Raising his voice or making sudden movements could worsen the situation. "Officer, I've been in law enforcement longer than you've been alive," Franklin said, his voice steady. Jack scoffed. "Yeah? And I'm supposed to believe that?" The tension was unbearable. Jack's finger hovered near the trigger of his firearm. Franklin knew he had to act carefully. Slowly, he reached into his pocket. "Don't move," Jack shouted, raising his gun. Franklin froze. "I'm just reaching for my ID." Jack's eyes narrowed. "Don't try anything stupid." Franklin pulled out his badge and held it up, the shiny gold emblem glinting in the sunlight. "Take a good look, Officer Burnett," Franklin said, his tone firm. Jack hesitated, his eyes darting between Franklin's face and the badge. The crowd leaned in, eager to see what would happen next. The silence was deafening as Jack stared at the badge in Franklin's hand. It took him a moment to process the words engraved on it: United States Department of Justice. Franklin's voice cut through the tension. "My name is Franklin Morris, former U.S. Attorney General." Jack's grip on his gun faltered, and he quickly lowered it. His face turned pale as the realization sank in. "Sir, I didn't know." "You didn't know because you didn't ask," Franklin replied, his voice calm but firm. "You made assumptions, Officer Burnett. Dangerous ones." The crowd erupted in whispers. Someone muttered, "That cop's in trouble now." The elderly woman, emboldened by Franklin's authority, stepped forward. "He's telling the truth," she said. "He saved me. Those boys ran off when he stepped in." Jack stammered, It was a mistake. I didn't mean any harm." Franklin didn't let him off easily. "Pointing a gun at an innocent man is more than a mistake, officer. It's a serious violation of protocol and trust." By now, additional police units had arrived, responding to calls from concerned onlookers. Jack's superior, Sergeant Peters, stepped out of one of the cruisers. "What's going on here?" Peters asked, looking between Jack and Franklin. Franklin handed over his badge and calmly recounted the events. Peters listened intently, his expression growing grim. "Burnett, is this true?" Peters asked. Jack nodded, unable to meet his superior's gaze. "Yes, sir." Within minutes, Jack was placed on administrative leave, his gun and badge confiscated. Franklin watched as the officer was escorted to a waiting vehicle. As the scene cleared, Franklin turned to the elderly woman. "Are you all right, ma'am?" She nodded, a small smile breaking through her tears. "Thank you for standing up for me. And for yourself." Franklin gave her a reassuring nod. Justice isn't just about courts and laws. It's about doing what's right. He resumed his jog, the quiet streets of Crescentville now filled with a new kind of respect from those who had witnessed the incident. And this brings us to the end of this story. Thank you for watching till the end. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with your friends too. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more fascinating stories. Have a nice day.